This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 101.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 101, and today's special guest is Raphael Paulin-Daigle, the founder of SplitBase, where he helps million-dollar e-commerce companies to get more sales from their existing website traffic. It's all about conversion optimization in today's episode, so listen carefully and enjoy today's show. Hey, Raphael, welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, Alex.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is that you do as a business right now.
Absolutely. So I'm Raphael, and right now I run a company called SplitBase, and we help high growth e-commerce companies increase their websites' profits and conversions.
That sounds good, short and to the point. But could you elaborate a little bit more? What is that exactly company that you could help companies with? And it's e-commerce companies, right? Mostly.
Yeah. So usually we help companies starting that are making around $1 million plus. We do have clients, making over 100 million. But usually our process really starts working at $1 million plus. And what we do is, in short, conversion optimization, which means that we go in and through a 6-month process, we do intensive quantitative and qualitative research on our clients' websites, which allows us to determine why people aren't buying, what makes them tick, what makes them buy, and also what are the friction points, so where the company is losing money and so on. So we do this research for like a month. It's called the conversion research. And that gives us a whole list of things we can test, things we can change, and things to do in order to increase the conversions and the sales on that website. So after we do this research, usually then we transition into a testing period. So based on the data we accumulated and all the insights we found, we start A/B testing. And that's an ongoing thing that we're going to do for a few months for our clients. Some clients, are really long-term. Some want to integrate it within their companies. And it's about continuous improvement. It's about continuous learnings and doing things right so they can really grow the ROI.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. And that sounds very interesting. And I've come across quite a few online marketers because that's where I mostly hang out, right? That, a lot of people say, yes, you need more traffic, you need more people coming to your website. And it's true. It's, the more traffic you get, especially if it's targeted traffic, you should only be aiming for targeted traffic. You don't want people who aren't interested in your offer anyway. And it's all sounds good and dandy. You need traffic and you need the most that you could get. However, a lot of people say that, yeah, although that's great, but, you could have the same traffic, but if you tweak your conversions and let's say double your conversions, you're making twice as much money with the same exactly traffic. And for some people, this actually comes before traffic. They're like, well, optimizing your conversions is a lot more important and could be a lot more profitable in the long run because, you could send 100 people to your website and nobody buys, yet they're interested. There is a problem. But if 7 people out of 100 buy, which is, pretty much unheard of, it's really a high conversion rate. But let's say 7 out of 100 buy, it's like, okay, I'm doing something right. And I guess this is where, as you mentioned, split testing comes in, where you figure out what works, what doesn't, and why.
Exactly. 100%.
All right. And how, what are you guys using? Are you, do you use a lot of software for all this testing? Or is it mostly actually people personally trying to figure out and, give us a little bit of an insight on how exactly you do all the split testing and so on.
Yeah, great question, Alex. I'll start with this. I think testing tools. So, by the way, we use Optimizely VWO, and we also use starting to use Sentient Ascend, which I won't really dive into, but that's actually an AI-driven testing platform that we're partnering up with, and we're starting to test on a few clients. But I have to say this before, is that I believe testing tools such as Optimizely, they're tools, right? They're not methodology within themselves. And that's where a lot of companies go wrong. And that's for companies of all sizes, right? I've seen this in Fortune 500, and I've seen this in smaller startups. And it's where they think that installing a testing tool such as Optimizely and just creating any test is going to work. But here's the truth. Like, setting a test is not as simple as the testing tools sell it to you.
Yeah.
It's much more complex. So finding the test ideas, we have a 1-month research process to know exactly what to test. But then there are also all the technicalities of how you set up the test, how you code it, how you design it, for how long you run it, to how many people you have to show it to. These are all very advanced technicalities. And then there's also the post-test analysis, right? You kind of have to really dig into your Google Analytics data. And that's what a lot of people don't do. What I'm observing is people log into Optimizely or VWO. They think they should test, change a headline. They'll change a headline, they'll hit test. And 2 days later, you should never end a test within 2 days, but 2 days later, test is over, and they think they made a data-driven decision when really all they did was nothing. They pressed a button, but in this scenario, it's better not to test at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've been thinking about that exact subject just yesterday, because I paid for a new tool I'm trying out, the SEMRush.
Okay, yeah.
And, I was looking at it, and it gives you a lot of very interesting information. And I'm sure a lot of people that purchase it, at least for the very first time, they just, research their website on it, because they're like, okay, look at all these keywords that I'm ranking for. Look at all my bank clicks, whatever.
Yep.
But it has so much potential that people aren't using, simply because they don't even have an idea on how to compare these metrics, what exactly they mean. And most of all, as you mentioned, they don't know how to test them properly, how long to test them for, and what kind of results to expect. Because I've been also running some Facebook ads on, not Facebook ads, I'm sorry, YouTube ads. So YouTube video ads. It's going through AdWords, and you could get a click-through rate on a video that's really high, and then you have a second video campaign for the same video, so basically different text in the ad, right? And you have very low click-through rate, and it runs for a day. And then I let it run for a week, and I see that a week later, the second campaign has a quite higher CTR than the first campaign that initially was higher, and it's only a week testing. It's still not enough time, I think, right? But as you said, if you run it for like a day or two, or if you just give it to a few hundred customers, it doesn't really mean anything. You could have a fluke of, for some reason, all these customers coming in today that only click on the yellow button when normally they would click on the green one. It's it's a really complex process. And I also believe that most people, especially smaller companies, they're impatient. They don't have, they don't have the experience with it, so they just want everything right there. Quick test, 3-hour run, but that doesn't give much. That doesn't give you the real picture.
I think at that point it's often vanity, right? People do it because they hear from bloggers or from other people that they should test. They have to do conversion optimization. They should test. And for them, conversion optimization also equals to testing. Yeah. And the truth behind this is that conversion optimization is a strategy. What really makes it work is the methodology that you have behind it. And testing is a tool to validate our hypotheses, to get more insights, and something we use. But that really only represents, maybe 20% of the whole methodology. So if you don't have the testing strategy, don't test if you don't have the proper methodology to do it. And actually back to your original question, it's as much as tools as people as processes. It's all of that together that kind of really creates the methodology and the magic, so to speak.
Yeah, I could only imagine. And thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure that if we went deeper into testing and conversions and so on, we could probably spend like 20 hours straight talking about that. So let's move on a little bit away from it. And I'd like to get into something a little bit more personal. Maybe you could explain how you got into the actual split base, how that idea was born, and how it bloomed into the actual business it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been building companies since, as long as I can remember, pretty much forever. And there's one common thing that would happen in every single company that I would build, and it was my obsession over marketing. I actually, fun fact, I used to be a magician for 7 years, and that was a while ago. But yes, I was a magician, and when I was a magician, the one thing that I really loved doing more than the magic was the marketing. Marketing the business and really working around that. And that was actually my first real business. I started it when I was 11 years old. And it was always marketing. And then I went on after that and I tried to build a few startups. Most of them didn't work. But again, I kept going back to marketing. And at some point I built this company called Ideal Input. Doesn't exist anymore, so don't try to find it. But it was basically a platform where small business owners could get feedback on their marketing materials. Just quick feedback. And when I was working on that, that's kind of when I discovered conversion optimization. And I got really, really, I was just amazed by it, because I think in my daily life, I'm a hardcore optimizer. If I walk to the office, I'll always try to figure out, all right, what side of the street is it faster to walk on? Should I cross the street in diagonal while the light is red and cars aren't coming? So it's like an obsession for me to optimize almost everything I do. Mm-hmm. And I just kept gravitating towards conversion optimization. And I was in Bitcoin for a little bit. But even then afterwards, I kept going back to conversion optimization. So about a year and a half ago, I was like, all right, I'm done doing just like freelancing. I'm done not setting on something very specific. And I'm really going to put my conversion optimization skills to good use. And that's when Splitbase was born.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome, man. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I think, I don't know if I want to call it luck, but it's really good in your case that you kind of figured out what you're good at and what you're really passionate about early on. Because I interact with a lot of people in the online marketing world, and I see a lot of people jumping through different parts of it for 5-10 years. Every year they change strategy, they change focus, not because they want to grow and expand, but because like, I've been doing this affiliate thing, I don't like it, I'm gonna do SEO. They do SEO for a year or two, and they're like, I'm not really getting clients because I thought it would be a lot more lucrative than it is. So I'm just going to do like marketing services for local business. And they keep jumping because, for the wrong reason, because they're trying to find the most lucrative of them all. And they can't figure out their real strength or passion. And I find that we just end up wasting a lot of time and effort doing that, running around. And I'm guilty of that. I've been running around, and it wasn't only, I guess it partially was because something is more lucrative. And just like you always came back to optimization, I always came back to like affiliate marketing and blogging. And, this podcast is not really about affiliate marketing, but I do get my fair share of people who use affiliate marketing that come on as guests on this podcast. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of, not just bloggers, but I want to say, people that use internet as a marketing platform mostly. And this is, I guess, one of my biggest passions. Just, I'm more niche down into affiliate marketing, but everything that has to do with internet marketing, online marketing in general, including conversion optimizations. I'm super interested in it because it's a fascinating world if you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You're so right. I dabbled, before setting into building SplitBase, I was doing generic marketing freelancing. And I dabbled in a lot of marketing disciplines. So affiliate marketing, PPC. I tried to learn about SEO, about kind of everything, right? And sometimes I realized that indeed it was for the wrong reasons. A lot of people are building or are into digital marketing to build a bank account. Yeah. Now that I'm doing SplitBase, I'm not there to build a bank account. I'm there to build an asset, to build a company, right? To build an actual thing. It's when you chase the bank account that I think motivation, you'll easily lose it.
Yeah.
And every single time that I was trying to chase a bank account, that's when things went kind of wrong. But since building SplitBase and focusing and telling myself it was okay for me not to be really good at PPC or SEO or any of these things and just focus on the one little thing that I really love, it just unlocked so many opportunities and just I'm just so much more happy.
Yeah, man, that's really awesome to hear. And I'm a big believer in doing what you're most passionate about, and the income will simply be a byproduct of that.
100%.
That's all. All right. So back to SplitBase. You finally figured out what you really want to do. You went with SplitBase idea for your company, and some of us kind of fall into that story as well. So I really want to do this particular thing. I, even picked a name for my company. I know exactly what services I'm going to be offering to people. That's all great. But how did you get your initial clients? How did you first start marketing your company? How did you get the word around?
Yeah, I have to admit, it was really hard. It's tough. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was really hard. I tried a lot of things, and I think that where the problem lied, where I was trying to launch an online course on my expertise, while trying to get new clients for the agency. So, bigger clients and not necessarily just dabbling with generic freelancing. And I was also trying to promote my services through many, many, many different techniques. So at the end of the day, I was working on getting the word out there through social media, through cold emails, through going to events, through ads, through blogging, through almost everything you could imagine, right? And what that made was that I didn't have any focus anywhere. So I wasn't getting any results. And that went on for, a few months, to be honest. And it was really hard. And I thought, it kind of sounds easy when you look, when you read certain blog posts and it's like, oh, jump into like consulting or build an agency. You'll find a client. But once you actually do it and you've got no credibility in the space, the clients you're going after, are kind of different than your other clients that you've served in the past. It kind of creates a different dynamic, So how did I get my first client? It was a friend. It was a friend with an e-commerce company, and I got involved. And we worked together for quite a few months, probably like half a year, 6 months. And eventually, based on that, I got actually the biggest catalyst to my business and got me my first 2 clients after this friend with the e-commerce company was a major blog post that I wrote on my blog called it's The Guide to Drip Marketing. It's not the exact title, but it's on my blog, and it's massive, like massive piece. And I wanted to get known for my methodology that kind of integrates conversion optimization and drip email marketing. And no such guide existed before, and it was so detailed, so in depth, that itself got me my first 2 clients and my first big client. that really kind of kickstarted my business. So that blog post, I would say, kind of changed a lot of things. I took the learnings from what I used to do in drip marketing when I was freelancing, and I was like, let's put it into one awesome guide. And still today it gets traffic, although like I don't use my personal blog anymore. Lost most of my share counts for social proof, when I changed the domain of my personal site. But when you look at it, got shared over way over 2,000 times. And it was a great piece for credibility and to kickstart things.
Wow, man, that sounds really awesome. And I was kind of hoping for a story like this one, because what I've noticed, I don't really know you. I've met you at a local marketing event called MTL Plus E-commerce. Yep. So we talked for a little bit, and I'm actually the guy who wrote your bio about you on the site. So I had to read through your whole biography on your website, the About Me page or whatever. And when I was done reading it, I was like, holy cow, this is like the longest About Me piece I've ever read. But it's like, the thing is, I didn't notice how long it was until I was done reading, because I was like consumed in it. I was like, okay, that's so interesting. What's next? And what's next? And I was like, man, this guy is like a really good marketer. He's a really good storyteller. So I was kind of expecting that you would share some marketing strategy that would involve content writing and storytelling, which, you totally delivered right now.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. And maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit more, as I just complimented you on storytelling. How big of a part do you think does that play in your business life generally?
Yeah, I think storytelling is key. I'm incredibly obsessed with persuasive copywriting. So copywriting, that kind of integrates storytelling, but that also leads to a goal. But as you said, that, it can be very long, but it never feels long.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, oh, I've got to read this. It's just, you read it and it's like you want to jump from one line to another, right? And I invested a lot in courses and in learning this type of copywriting. And I'm also lucky to have one of my really good friends in Montreal. He's one of the world's best email copywriter, Ryan Schwartz, if maybe you've heard of him. But so that's been one key thing in my emails that I send, in my bio, just making the content very interesting to consume. Now, when I write blog posts, it's a bit different, right? Because the goal is a bit different. It's just to kind of inform and get the information out there in an interesting way. And I have to admit, my blog has never been the biggest driver of leads. These two first major clients are pretty much the only clients that I've ever gotten from the blog. Full disclosure. Most other clients came through referrals and word to mouth. Even to this day, only now I'm kind of starting to look into how I can integrate new marketing techniques to sell the services. But I think content is important. We're actually starting a split-based blog real soon. But I think the key within all of this is to know your audience. That's it. I think that's the secret to it. When I was writing my bio, I was writing in a way, I was writing it for the reader.
Yeah.
And to do the storytelling and to make it interesting. And it's the same thing when I wrote the landing page copy for Splitbase. It's the same thing when I write anything else, really. It's about who's that person? What is the context? What are they looking to learn or achieve by reading this? And it took me, just like, for example, for the Splitbase landing page, it took me so long to have a copy that I'm happy with. Today, I feel I've never been so clear on who my target customer is. So I've been able to really tailor it to my target audience. But that's a key.
Yeah.
Know your audience. Do your research. Survey them. Talk to them. And this is what we do with every client.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you, and I don't always follow this advice, although I try to give it to everyone else. And I think it's totally important to first of all know your target audience, and a lot of people when you would approach them and ask them about their business or their startup, their brand new blog, and you're like, who are you targeting? Like, I have this like blog on making money online, so I'm targeting everyone who wants to make extra money. Like, whoa, dude, that's wrong. That's just like, you can't. There's, half of your potential, not potential audience, but half of the people that you're trying to target, they're gonna hate you, and report your website to Google for spamming or something, even though it's not, because you simply don't appeal to them. You have to. One of the big suggestions is to create an actual avatar, an imaginary person who's your perfect client or your target audience, and explain everything about them: male, female, what country they live in, which city they live in, how old they are, do they have kids, do they have a job, what kind of car they drive, and like all these littlest details. And then when you have that perfect client in your mind, right, you could start writing to that person, personally to that very specific person, because you know what kind of words they want to hear, what kind of triggers they like or they go for. So like, it makes it a lot easier. Yes, you will reach to less people doing that, but you will reach to people who are actually interested in what you have to offer.
Exactly. A lot of business owners or marketers are afraid to narrow down in fear of closing doors. Yeah. Right. In fear of not all of a sudden, reducing their opportunities. And I think it's a valid concern, because I've had that concern for a long time. But I'm realizing now it's really not something to worry about, because as you niche down and you become very focused on the person you're talking to, it's going to become extremely relevant to that person, which means you're increasing your chances of actually converting your ideal client or customer or reader. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't speak at all to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? Someone else can read that, and even if there are a few things that doesn't apply to them, it doesn't mean that you're now completely out of question.
Yeah, totally.
So that's something to really look into and think about. And I just always encourage people to say, like, niche down. Even when I was building my agency, I was like, oh, should I do, SaaS or e-commerce, or like, who should my target customer be? And I kind of used to do everything. And I went uniquely to SaaS for a while. Then for some reason, even if I was only marketing to SaaS companies, and this is kind of crazy because for months I was only blogging, making videos, and communicating to SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And guess what? At one point, 100% of my customers were e-commerce companies, even though everything I did was related to SaaS.
Yeah.
Everything. At that point, I was like, all right, let's stop the SaaS, the SaaS side of things. And I'm now 100% of the focus of the agency is on e-commerce companies. And I think I do have a preference for e-commerce too. But see, it's just the perfect example to me. It's like what we think is like, it's gonna close doors, or it's if I only talk to that customer, it's not gonna work. It just proved to me that no, it's like people probably mainly see you for conversion optimization, even if you talk about SaaS all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if I would shift, the world would shift too, and not necessarily.
Yeah. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, Raphael. So. You got your first clients, and at this point you have more than just those two initial clients. So I guess the question would be, how did you end up growing that company? Was it mostly word of mouth, or have you kind of expanded on your marketing and whatnot? How does it work right now at this point?
Yeah, as much as I would love to say that I had this very elaborate or really cool marketing trick or technique, I really don't.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, like the way the business really grew, And that's what's so crazy, when I was building the agency, I've always been looking for this little magic trick, in the early days.
We all do that.
Yeah, and you realize like it doesn't exist. Yep. Like it's either you really focus on something, and when I launched the agency, I was like, and under the split-based name, I was like, all right, we've got great work, we've got a few clients. We're going to focus on doing great work and hopefully get referrals. And sometimes that was a mistake because all of a sudden I would get a month with absolutely no client. Mm-hmm. That happened once and it was very scary. Just you forget that while you do client work, you also have a business to run.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen anymore because we've built the credibility and we've got all the clients to support it. But it was really through word of mouth. We did great work. We communicated it. Now I have to say, I do have a landing page for the company. We work with companies like L'Oreal, Kiehl's, Frank and Oak. So obviously that brings credibility. So now it's way easier to get new clients, and we're in talks with other really large brands that I'm sure everybody knows. But that is because we got a few of these flagship customers through word of mouth, because it all started with the little clients that really loved what we did. We still wrote a case study about it. It's on, and now I have to admit I've been neglecting case studies, but it is something that we want to get more into and set something that's a bit different from word of mouth and referrals. But for now, it's all been word of mouth.
Yeah, man, that's really awesome. And I guess, when you have a good word of mouth marketing, it's simply because your service or your product is amazing and it over delivers.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. All right, Raphael, next question is a bit on a kind of a darker side. What was your hardest moment building that company? Maybe you've even had a moment when you thought, you know what, split base or my own business, it just not gonna work for me. It's way too hard. It's not what I thought it would be. It's, taking all my energy and it's not giving me anything back. I should quit, go get a job. Yeah. Or, can you share like a dark or really hard moment that you've had in your business?
Absolutely. And it was actually before split base. Because before split base, I tried to launch something similar for like 6 months.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what core offering I wanted to offer. And I wasn't sure exactly who to target. Mm-hmm. And it was right after leaving a job, my first and only job, to be honest, because I've always been an entrepreneur. But I had one job for 9 months. After 9 months, I was like, I've learned a lot. It was incredible. But now I really have to get back to conversion optimization, and I really want to do my own thing. And when I left that, I had a little bit of savings, but I thought it would be way easier than it actually was to, get clients and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And that was a dark moment where for a few months, I was running really, really, really low on my savings. I had no confirmed client. I wasn't sure of my core offering, and I felt a bit lost. I felt like I've never worked so much, and yet I've never had so little results. I was working way longer days than I work today, and yet, and money was flying. It was just disappearing from the bank account every single day, and I was like, wow, I feel like I don't have leads. Like what's happening? It sounded so much easier. And that was way before split base, and that was really hard. To keep going through all these challenges, and through all the no's of the company. So I thought at the time really that my ideal client would be startups. I don't know why. I think it was just because I was comfortable with tech startups, because I had been in that space for a long time. But what would happen, and I would talk to a lot of them, but what would happen is at the end of the day, they would, after X many meetings, they would never have the money to pay. It would just never work. So it was so hard, because I could talk in a month, maybe to 10 companies that were supposedly interested. I would send proposals and nothing would happen. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard until I have really bad memory of timelines. But after around like 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 of that really hard moment, then I was like, all right, I think I'm going to focus more on e-commerce, more on conversion optimization instead of trying to do everything just to get money in the bank or just to get everything out there. And that's when I got my friend with the e-commerce company that I started working with to focus on conversion optimization. And when I focused, and I got out of it by focusing and deciding conversion optimization was all I did. Even though I've been in conversion optimization for 5 years, at that point, I had been doing it for 5 years. Can you imagine? I was still trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of making sales. And that was the problem. That's why it was so hard. That's why I couldn't find any client. And at the day I decided, all right, no, I'm going to accept that conversion optimization is what I'm really good at. It's been the thing in marketing that I've been into for the longest. I'm just going to focus on it. And boom, all of a sudden, it was like a refreshing breath of fresh air where it was just like, all right, I know where I'm going. I can focus. And then I started getting clients.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, man. Great story. Yeah. And Raphael, I ask you to share this story mostly because something you mentioned earlier, when people keep looking for this magic trick and shortcuts. So I'm glad you shared your overnight success story that took 5 years. 5 years in the making, right? And a lot of people listening to this podcast, not just this podcast, but, a lot of people reading these case studies and blog posts and listening to podcasts. And a lot of them think, I know what, like, this guy's really awesome and he's really lucky because, look, he started the split-based company and, he's an overnight success. No, guys, that's not how it works.
No.
It takes, most of the time it takes years of doing something. Sometimes it could take 10, 15 years of not really building a company, but getting to that point where you know what you want to do, your offering, who you're targeting. In your case, you said it took about 5 years of you running after the conversion optimization to finally find your focus and to know which exactly part of it you want to be involved with.
Yeah, and you know what? It's crazy when I think about this. It's that, I think we all have a thing that we're really good at that's probably staring at us in the face, and yet we don't realize that that thing that we're really good at is something we should utilize. Yeah. And for 5 years, I had been learning and doing conversion optimization for freelance clients over the years. And yet, like, I wasn't realizing that that's what I was supposed to focus on. Right? Like, it's just crazy. Like, one thing. And yet you still try to kind of go everywhere and be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is right in front of you.
Yeah, that's, it's good that you said that. And it's scary a little bit, to be honest. It's scary how simple things are sometimes and how we overcomplicate for nothing. And, I think sometimes is what they call the fear of success that holds us down. Because when you do realize something is simple enough, you're not going to start doing it because you're like, well, it's not really fear of success, but you're thinking, well, it can't be that simple. There has to be something else. I'm going to put that task away for a little bit. Yeah. I'm just going to look into my Google Analytics and try to figure out. It's like, no, that's not like, in for many bloggers and people that are involved with content, the biggest two things that they need to be doing is creating more amazing content consistently, and they have to be reaching out to other influencers. Like, that's it. But people start looking into, okay, so this blog, my competitor, what are they doing? Let me try to figure out where their backlinks are coming from. no, guys, that's not the secret. You already know the secret. Do more content.
Yeah.
And, you might be too scared because it's too simple. You might be scared because, it's a lot of work, because creating quality content does take a lot of effort. And it's right there in front of you, but you don't do it because, for so many reasons. We just, like, as you said, it could be right in front of you all this time, but you're not going to grab onto it because of whatever excuse that you might come up with.
Yeah. And one thing I think that's important to note is, even recently, this is not over. This is something that's still happening to me all the time. Like I'm learning every single day. There's always something different. And now we're kind of growing into, a bit bigger companies, higher price points. And I was working on the sales methodology with one of my advisors, and we were talking, and I was telling him my goals, and he was like, well, Raphael, you realize you know how to attain those goals, right? And what you're telling me for sales, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, all right, well, how would you reach out to this person? I'm like, well, I would do this, I would do this, I would do this, I would do that. He's like, well, exactly. See, you already know the answer to your problem, but you're just trying to find something way more complicated. It's just, I think, like, we have this obsession of overcomplicating ourselves.
Yeah.
Simple things work.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's eye-opening, and I hope it's eye-opening for many listeners of this podcast. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
All right, man. So, Raphael, one of the last questions for you as we're approaching the end of this episode. What would be your biggest suggestion? What is that one most important thing that beginner entrepreneurs have to pay the most attention to?
There are so many things that come up to mind.
Well, you don't have to limit yourself to just one. You could do like 2 or 3 best ones, in your opinion.
So I'll start with one thing on the conversion side, or on improving your marketing for any entrepreneur out there.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the case, not just for conversion optimization, but any entrepreneur out there. You don't know what you don't know. So when you're working on your marketing, do your research. And I know I'm gonna say that, and a lot of people are still gonna be behind their screens or, listening to it, and they'll agree, but they won't take action. It's just so important to go out to, call your clients, your potential clients, research, survey potential clients or your users. You can't imagine the number of times I talk with a founder or a marketer, and they say they know everything about their users and their company, and then we do a research for them, and everything we found, like 90% of it, is absolutely new to them.
Wow.
So people are marketing or building companies and are trying to sell things blindly, thinking that they know how to sell it, thinking they know what their audience wants. But most of the time, no, you don't know what your audience wants. So it's just so important. Some companies, maybe their products are really good. Their product or service is really good. But if you're not communicating well, how can you sell that?
Yeah.
If you're not communicating it well? Sure, some softwares or some products are probably useless and solve problems that people don't actually have. That's one thing, and that's why it's so important to validate and talk to your clients and to potential customers. But there's also the fact a lot of companies have great products, great services, a great brand, but yet they're not creating any attachment, and they're not creating the need because they can't communicate it.
Yeah.
They're not hitting the pain points. So that would be actually my number one piece of advice. Do your research. Know your market. Know the pain that it solves.
Great advice, man.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And yeah, that's, this is also something that we keep hearing about. But as you said, most of us never really pay attention. We actually do pay attention when we hear it. We're like, wow, this is truly amazing advice, and this is what I should be doing. And then we watch some YouTube video, and then we, forget all about it.
Yeah, I had 2 tech startups in the past that failed because of the lack of validation, because I was too afraid to get outside of my house and talk to people and really validate the idea. I thought I could do it all online. I thought even just surveying people online would cut it, or running ads and see if people bought would cut it. But no, it failed because I lacked the actual context and the actual conversations.
Yeah, totally. And this is something I picked up, I think, from Tim Ferriss' book, The 4-Hour Work Week, when he said, when you have this product or service idea and you want to validate it, right? It's like, go to your friends and ask them if this is a product or service they would want to buy. And, he said most of them will be like, yeah, sure, because they want to encourage you. It's like, if they do say yes, ask them to
ask for money.
Yeah, exactly. Prepay you $50 and you'll give them access to the software or to whatever product once it's available. He's like, and at this point, if most people or all of the people are not giving you the money to pre-order that product, well, maybe that's the validation that people don't really need it. They're just saying that they do. They're just saying that it's good, but it's not really, simply asking, do you think that's a good idea? It's actually not doing proper research. That's not enough.
Alex, that was the number one piece of advice I've received when I was building my startups. Number one, get paid. Everybody's going to say they are interested because they don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
And if it's your friends, it's even worse. They don't want to say no to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's just so important to get that dollar. And I have to credit it to Dan Martell. So maybe you've heard of him. Mm-hmm. And I was really lucky to be his neighbor pretty much when I lived in Moncton, New Brunswick a few years ago. And to this day, he's still a really, really good friend and advisor. And that piece of advice is the one thing that completely changed the game for me. If people aren't ready to pay you money, how do you expect to build a company on top of it?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Don't fall in love with your ideas.
That's another big problem.
Yeah.
We're all romantics at heart, and we think our idea is the best and the most profitable, but not always.
Nope.
All right, Raphael. Well, thank you so much for this piece of advice, and thanks for sharing all of that. Now, for people who want to find out more about you or your company, they want to see what SplitBase is, how it works, where should they go?
Yeah, so SplitBase would be splitbase.com. So you can check that out. That's my agency. And there's also a link on there to my personal blog, which is not, I don't really post anymore, but there's a lot of great content on there for people who are looking to increase their conversions. So that would be number one. And I'm also on Twitter at @Paulin-Daigle. For people listening, you might want to check my name on the podcast to see how to spell that. Yeah. But I'm also there, and probably the best way to interact with me.
All right, Raphael, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your advice, your ideas, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. It was really a pleasure chatting and sharing all of this with your audience. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Extra Paycheck Podcast. As always, head over to extrapodcast.com/101. This is where I will be putting up show notes page with links and other resources mentioned in today's episode. Also, head over to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show through iTunes. Please do leave a rating and a review, which will help the show tremendously. Thank you once again so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next Monday.